I think this is so important because there's a lot of messages out there. Let's be happy. Let me show you how to just be happy all the time. And I say that is just not realistic. I say we are human. We have this whole array of emotions for a reason. And the reason for those negative emotions is to help us learn about ourselves, help us motivate ourselves to get and do better.
Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
I've been so excited to have you on. I read your book. It's freaking amazing. And where I want to start is you talk about how anxiety is one of the most misunderstood emotions.
Yes.
And I want to start with a quote of yours that says, "We simply approach it as something to avoid, get rid of, or dampen. We not only don't solve the problem, but actually miss an opportunity to leverage the generative power of anxiety."
Yes.
So talk to me about that, because obviously in this day and age, anxiety is almost seen as a disability.
It is, actually. And so I start the whole book with this idea that evolutionarily, anxiety and stress is protective for us. It is something good for us. And so how can it be good? It helps protect us from dangers that are out there. And 2.5 million years ago, the dangers were things like lions and big animals. And so it evolved that way. It evolved to help us either fight off the animal or run away. So that's the fight or flight response. So even today, it is protective. That anxiety, what if the Delta variant is really bad? That is something to be worried about. And what happens is, something happened between 2.5 million years ago and today. And that is, now we have a news feed that's 24/7 that focuses on all these terrible things going on and hypes it up sometimes in a way that may not be absolutely accurate. We have Instagram feeds going all the time that are basically sources for constant levels of fear, anxiety, stress. And so then it stops being protective. It starts to be damaging if it goes up all the time. But if we can harness the power of that brain activation energy that was evolved to put us into action to help solve these dangers in our lives, that is what I was talking about in that quote. That is what decreases the stress. That's what makes our life happier. But if we turn away and say, I just want to try and be happy all the time over here, even though that never happens, you miss this opportunity. It is so powerful to dig into those negative emotions and figure out, what is that caused by? What does that mean I am inspired by or repulsed by or fearful of? And that is very valuable information for all of us.
Okay, I love that. I love the whole understanding of where it comes from. For me, that's very useful for me to think through it of why, because that allows me to not judge myself when it does happen. It's like, oh, well, it's biological, Lisa. 2 million years ago, you're being hunted by a lion, so you're glad this happened. The problem is in those moments of anxiety, crippling anxiety. Obviously, the last thing you think of is that this is supposed to help me.
So helpful,
Right. So how do you start to pass that? In fact, actually, let's start from how do you start to identify when you're having the anxiety occur? Because in the book, you start listing all these things of if you notice yourself do this, then you have anxiety. I honestly never would have said that I have anxiety. Never. I would have been like, I'm all over the place. If you'd asked me what the word was, I kind of just would have said that. Listening to your breakdown of if you find yourself cleaning a lot, if you find yourself repeating something in your head, like all of these things, and I was like, oh my God, do I have anxiety? But it never dawned on me. And so the reason why I would love to list those out is the people that are listening now, whether you've got severe anxiety or don't even think you have anxiety, starting to identify if you have or not, and then we can start to piece through when you're in those moments of anxiety, how on earth do you tell yourself, this feeling is great?
Right. So first, let's just start with the definition of anxiety. Anxiety is that fear and worry about something that is imminent. It's not something that has happened or is happening. It's something that could happen.
It's always could.
Yes, always could happen. And so that's anything. There could be an earthquake tomorrow. That could happen. We could get a terrible president in the next round. That could happen. And this is where the 24-hour news cycle and the Instagram feeds come in. Those can become sources of, oh, I don't have that great outfit. I am reading the news articles and, oh, these terrible things happening all across the world. When is it going to start happening here? So it is pervasive, and I'm not breaking any secrets when I say that levels of anxiety, including not clinical anxiety, what I call everyday anxiety, have gone up since the pandemic. And I'll just add that I was like you. I was like, I don't have anxiety. I didn't want to admit I had anxiety. So 90% of the population in the United States identify that they suffer from anxiety. And I was that other 10% that actually does have anxiety, but didn't want to admit it, because I like to give the impression of always happy, always enthusiastic. And so I was very good at masking my anxiety. But through the process of writing the book, I was like, oh my God, I have so much anxiety. That's anxiety, and that's anxiety, and that's anxiety. And so I always start with, well, what is the first thing? This is the first thing that people ask. How do I start to decrease that negative feeling? Because sometimes if it gets so bad, you can't do anything. You can't decide, tell yourself that it's helpful. You can't do anything. So my first recommendation, what is the most powerful thing that you can do right now to quell those feelings of anxiousness and anxiety? And that is to activate part of your nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. And that by breathing, deep breathing activates the calming part of your nervous system. So simply doing something as simple as 4-part breath, inhaling for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, holding out for 4. You can feel it immediately starting to bring you back into the moment. And so I'm not saying this works at the depths of an anxiety attack, but when you start feeling that, take the moment and just do an experiment on yourself. Let me just see. It takes just a few seconds to do the deep breathing. You can do it in the middle of a meeting that may not be going very well. Nobody will know that you're doing it, and it will work to calm your nervous system.
How do you then interrupt yourself in order to say, oh, hey, this is one of those moments you need to do that breathing? Because normally, at least for me, when I start to get anxious, now that I've realized I'm anxious, I just keep repeating like in that moment. It's usually in hindsight that I'm like, oh, okay, I should have done the deep breathing, now let me do it. And so I still do it, but it's usually somewhat after the fact than really present in that moment.
But I bet you and me and everybody else, there are certain regularities in our life that bring us anxiety. We can say, oh yeah, that person, oh yeah, I get lots of anxiety. That situation, I get lots of anxiety. So do a little self-reflection. Then you can predict exactly when those anxious moments are likely to occur. Get ready with that breath to do that little experiment and just start to get more aware of those anxious moments. The more you practice that, the more you'll start to catch it earlier and earlier so you can quell it. And that's a skill. You know, it's not a pill that you take. It requires some self-reflection, which I think is one of the most powerful tools in this book. How do you self-reflect productively and effectively about your own anxiety to change it?
Well, how do you, Wendy?
Well, you start with observations about where your anxiety is coming. You start to implement this immediate breathing exercise. The book is full of tools. It's a big toolbox of things that you can do to quell your anxiety. Not all of them are immediate. Some of them, like breathing, are. The other one that I always my go-to is movement. Physical activity. Go take a walk outside. You say, I'm in the office. Well, go walk up and down the stairs just once. You don't have to get all sweaty. Just move your body, because I know that every single time we move our bodies, we give our brains a wonderful bubble bath of neurochemicals. Neurochemicals like dopamine and serotonin that will decrease your anxiety levels. So there's tools for the immediate quelling of anxiety. There are longer term tools that help you shift your mindset, to build up tools to kind of rebalance. If you have too much stress and negative emotions in your life, there are tools to help you consciously build more moments of positive anxiety. In fact, that's one of my favorite tools, which is the tool of joy conditioning. So joy conditioning is using what we know about how memory works to strengthen a particular memory. And the memory that I want you to strengthen is one where the emotions that you felt were just yummy and happy or funny, whatever you choose. Use your own personal memory to come up with one of those emotions. And the trick that I add in the book is that we know that smell or scent is a really powerful way to evoke all other aspects of a memory. So the example I give from my life is that I have a memory of this amazing yoga class that I went to. The teacher was great. I got into all the positions. I was feeling really good. And then I went down to do the pose that I'm best at, which is Shavasana. So I was in Shavasana, and the teacher came around. I was feeling so good. It's like I crushed it. And the teacher came around and she waved some lavender scent under my nose. My eyes were closed. She gave me the most luscious 5-second neck massage that I've ever had. And when I need just that memory of the feeling of I did really well and I got this extra surprise, I literally go around with a little vial of lavender because it brings me back to that. And the more I evoke that, the stronger those positive memories are.
I love the smell thing. It's called, you called it the olfactory cue?
Yes.
I'd never heard of it referred to as that.
Yeah. So the scent of smell is also called your olfactory scent. And the first nerve is called the olfactory nerve, which is the nerve that brings in all the scent information.
Explain exactly what happens, because I remember being a kid and smelling something and it hit me emotionally very hard. And so now actually as an adult, I often will wear my husband's clothes. Like if he's not around and I just want to find comfort, I actually will just put a sweater of his on, but not a clean one that actually smells like him because of the smell. So what is actually going on between the sensories?
Yeah, so we know the answer to that. And the answer is that the part of the brain really important for laying down new memories is called the hippocampus. And most of the other senses, all of the other senses, vision, touch, hearing, they have to go through many different connections before they get to the hippocampus. Lots of highly processed information. However, olfaction, that sense of smell, is the only sense that goes directly into the hippocampus. Why is that? Well, probably because the sense of smell is very ancient. So that was one of our first senses. And it was very important that that particular modality get into memory. So danger scent, if there is, whatever, the bear scent or the lion scent, that we get that into our memory banks very, very quickly. And it has stayed with us after these millions of years, which is why we have all had that, I remember, that reminds me of grandma's table and having dinner around grandma's table. And it can be so evocative, because the sense of smell is naturally evocative of retrieving a whole range of memories that we have.
Wow, that's so fascinating. So how do you actually then use it? How would you advise someone that is having, anxiety to use that sensory to be able to, bring down their anxiety?
Yeah. So this is how I talk about it in the book. So joy conditioning, this idea about bringing the sense memory in, that brings a joyful memory up, is a direct counter action to fear conditioning that happens all the time. This is our natural reflex that if something really bad happens, like if here's some big bad thing exploded right here and we got mud all over our clothes here, maybe I wouldn't have a good association. I would not have a good association with these couches. And that is protective, because if bad things happen in a certain spot, this happens when you get robbed or, mugged, you start to get fearful when you go to that same location. That happens automatically. Well, if we just think about that, it's like, how depressing. I just build up all these negative, fearful memories. Well, let's build up some positive memories, and we consciously bring up the most joyful memories of our life. When is the last time you thought about your top 5 joyful memories in your life?
Ooh. Not too often.
Yeah, I don't do it. I didn't do it, but now I do certain ones that have these olfactory scents. But it just reminds me, oh my God, there's all of these wonderful memories with families, memories with friends. I just had a dinner last night. That's going to be one of my joy conditioning memories of the smell of LA that has a particular smells very different from Midtown Manhattan. I'll tell you that. But just wonderful friends outside eating California fresh food. My favorite thing. And what if we just think about those more? It brings up those joyful feelings more, and you have control over that. It's not the world kind of forcing you into these reflexive things. If I want to bring up these joyful memories, maybe that's a wonderful thing to do in the morning. What is your morning joyful memory? What is your evening joyful memory to fall asleep to? So I love that.
Can you create your own then? So like, for instance, let's say people listening at home, they're like, oh, I'm not sure I actually have one. Like, could you almost go, all right, I'm going to get the smell of cinnamon and I'm going to hang out with my friends. And every time I hang out with my friends, I'm going to smell cinnamon. And now over time, I've created the thing where every time I smell cinnamon, I get a nice warm feeling because it reminds me of my friends.
I love that idea. I did not talk it. That comes directly from Lisa. New,
yes, Wendy approved.
New tool that we will use for good anxiety. I hope everybody uses it for good anxiety. But absolutely, you can do that. Create that, and that's also this new awareness. You know, this is a wonderful new memory here, and let's put that into my library of joy conditioning. Be proactive about it, and that will just kind of increase all of those good feelings that you have during the day.
So I actually really want to talk about something that you talk about, which is foolish reframing, of people reframing the situation, but it actually doesn't end up serving them. Because I love reframing. I think it really can.
Yes.
Just like you've done with the book, where you've taken anxiety and made it a good thing.
Yes.
But talk to me about where people can take that too far.
Yeah, so this comes from a story in the book. A brilliant friend of mine who said, I've never been rejected from, she's a journalist. No editor has ever rejected me. I was, wow, I knew people from Harvard were smart, but I didn't realize they reached that level. And then she went a little bit deeper and said, well, it's not that I've never been rejected. It's just that I've gotten something useful out of even the, editor letters that say, I'm sorry, but this is just a load of
BS.
Terrible stuff. BS, yes. And, she approaches that as, thank you. That's so useful. That's such useful information. It's not a rejection because she will go turn around and get it in someplace else. So it's not a global rejection. It is a new piece of information. And I questioned, do I want to apply that in my toolbox? And I said, no, I like to call a big failure a big failure. And I think it's healthy to be able to admit that and to learn from it, because everybody has failures. And it's hard to understand. I didn't want to go around saying, I've never had any failures, so I don't know that. I think this brings up a wonderful and really important idea from the book, which is negative emotions like embarrassment and fear and worry, they are very useful for us. So yeah, when I say, there was this big failure that I had, it makes me embarrassed. It makes me uncomfortable. But it's important to lean into that, because only by kind of getting more comfortable with these so-called negative emotions can you say, okay, I accept them. They're there. What can I learn from them? It's not like it erased all the failures. It was a failure, but it got me to this direction, or it left me stuck for a little while and I was wallowing around in this in a little while, which also happens. It's reality. I think this is so important because there's a lot of messages out there. Let's be happy. Let me show you how to just be happy all the time. And I say that is just not realistic. I say we are human. We have this whole array of emotions for a reason. And the reason for those negative emotions is to help us learn about ourselves, help us motivate ourselves to get and do better. If I was happy all the time, would you want a bride on her wedding day to help you get things done? Or do you want somebody that has a little fire underneath them and really wants to prove themselves? I'll take the person with a little fire and maybe a little anxiety every single day. That is the power of these emotions. And when we start to embrace them, only then do we start to appreciate what they bring to our lives.
Good, I love that. What I have found is there's two types of camps. There's camp A, that's you. No, call it a failure.
Yeah.
I do on purpose. I want it to sting. I want to feel the shame because it's that's going to get me to act.
Yes.
I freaking love that, girl. I am with you in camp A. We are having hamburgers together and we are sitting in the sun talking about this. In the other camp, it's the people that find that extremely detrimental, that they find that owning it by feeling the shame, that it becomes detrimental to their self-esteem and makes them not act and actually do the opposite and retreat. So what do you say to the people that are in the other camp that almost do it to protect themselves? Is it still useful?
Yes. I mean, at certain points in our development, it can be useful. As I just said, I was in the camp, I'm not anxious, I'm happy all the time. So that's a little bit of foolish reframing, right? No, I wasn't happy all the time, but I wanted everybody else to believe I was happy all the time. And so what changed? It was I learned more about myself. I got more realistic with myself. And
when you say realistic, what do you mean?
I don't know if there's any other perfectionists out there, but I am and have always been a big perfectionist, and that it was either perfection or utter failure. And that is not realistic. It is a learning experience, and everybody said, oh yeah, you learn more from your failures than and I would say, yeah, I've heard of that, but I like to be perfect all the time. And it was living that and learning from that. And it was actually an experience like that was really the origin story of how this book became this book. And that experience was something that we'll all have to go through, which was unexpected losses, deaths in my family. Both my father and my younger brother passed away within 3 months of each other. And talk about like a tidal wave of these horrible grief and anger and just unnameable emotions. I didn't even know what I was feeling. And having to go through that, and that was a very difficult time. And slowly coming out, because I had tools in my toolbox that helped: meditation, movement. I've always had a positive, maybe too positive, I want to be perfect, but I used that, and it helped me realize how much wisdom comes from great pain. And it was actually a trainer that I was working out with, and she said, with great pain comes great wisdom. And I said, that's what I've been realizing, that I'm so incredibly grateful and lucky to be alive. And that's kind of hard to accept because there's a lot of guilt. It's like, why was I the one that stayed here? And I realized going through that all of those negative emotions are helpful. And in fact, I needed to find the power behind those negative emotions. And that is why this book became what it did, because I was going through that and finding the deeper love that I had at the end of that for my family that's there, that it was there. It's not like I didn't love them, but there was a heightened level of appreciation. There was more wisdom there, and I wanted to help people find their wisdom and their joy through the difficult emotion of anxiety. And that's why I called it Misunderstood, that people think it's something to leave behind and shut in the closet door, but is actually there to help us learn and to improve our lives.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. In reading your book and that story, actually, the very first thing I did is I texted my brother. And I was like, you better know. I literally was like, you better already know this, but I'm just telling you anyway. I was like, I just need you to know how important you are to me and how much I love you. And I told him I just read your book, and I was like, her brother died, and I never want to miss an opportunity to ever say that. And he was like, of course I know that, but it never hurts to always hear it. So thank you. So thank you, Wendy, for kind of reminding me to reach out to my brother and say that. It's like you can never replace. You can never go back in time. And so always trying to make sure that I'm showing up in my true self and really pushing is so important.
Yeah,
so
it really
thank
is.
you for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Talk to me about don't stop the playlist of what if. So talk to me about that notion.
Yeah. So a big theme in this book, because it's a big theme of my own personal anxiety, is the what if list. So anxiety, once I admitted that I have it, comes to me right before I go to sleep. And I'm about to go to sleep. I'm looking forward to it. It's feeling really good. And then boom, like, what if Lisa asks you a question and you don't know how to answer it? What if, all the interviews go terribly? What if, you get fired tomorrow? And I start thinking about this what if list. And I think that is a very common form of anxiety that hits us in many different ways and in many different parts of the day. And so, what do you do with that? How do you switch that? And the answer came in at a birthday party when I was talking to a lawyer about writing this book, Good Anxiety. She said, "Oh, anxiety? Anxiety made me the lawyer that I am today." And I said, "Oh, do tell. What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I take all those worries and all those anxieties that keep me up late at night, and I make them into the strongest case that I can, because they're all things that, the other side might bring up. What if the judge asks this?" And so I go through and I address them all. And with each addressing of each point, I feel better and better and better. And in fact, what I end up doing is when that anxiety, worry, what if list comes up, because it still does, I say, never mind. I'm going to take care of that first thing tomorrow morning. I could go to sleep right now because it's going to be taken care of. It takes a little practice, but it actually turns your worry into an action, which is the original purpose of anxiety or the stress response in the first place. It gets kind of co-opted if you just take that worry and just do nothing and just sit here and be paralyzed with worry, which can happen. So I try and give people step-by-steps for how to take that worry and put it into action so you can dissipate your anxiety.
That makes complete sense, going back to how we started this interview, where you said anxiety basically is the fear of something about to happen.
Yes, exactly.
So by addressing them, by allowing anxiety to have a voice, if you will, you're now letting it speak. It's saying what it's worried about, and it allows you the opportunity to then turn up prepared.
Yes.
I love that. So let's actually talk about social anxiety. It's a real thing, and I'm hearing a lot of people are getting anxious about going into, the real world, if you will. How do people start preparing for those types of situations? Because instinct, I think, is to not go out, right? It's like, oh, this causes me anxiety, this causes me stress. Well, let's not do it then.
Right.
And I fear that just gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
The more you stay home, the more you stay, isolated.
Yeah. Well, my best tip is to think about those friends that you admire for their ability to, be great social butterflies, and those are the people that talk to everybody, maybe your funniest friends, and hang out with them. Invite them to come with you. So you have a wingman or a wingwoman, one that you like, you admire, that they're always, good at doing that. So it gets the ball rolling. So you have a little bit of a runway. So, they warm it up and you can jump in. And you don't necessarily have to rely, you're not going to go by yourself to a bar to start to meet people now, but keep it friendly. Not a huge group, but maybe one or two people that will make you feel more comfortable. We are social animals, and I think that social component, using it in the positive way, even though there's a lot of social anxiety, we all have friends that we admire that way, and use them.
I actually have a quote of yours that really hit me, and I kind of want to go deep down. We now know that there are serious health risks associated with loneliness. For example, one meta-analysis that examined 300,000 patients showed that lonely people have a 50% greater probability of death compared to patients with adequate social relationships.
Yeah.
50%.
50%. And on the flip side, the number one predictor of a longer life is large numbers of social interactions, including not just, the girlfriend that you've had since you were 3, but friendly relationships with the person that makes your coffee, with anybody. Keeping those alive, getting good at just having a friendly banter, so important. We have evolved to be a social species. And so this is why this loneliness is affecting us, and it tends to affect older people more because they get isolated. Deafness is associated with high levels of mortality because there's nothing that gets you more isolated more quickly than deafness. Whoa. You cannot hear the conversation, and nobody can tell that you're deaf. So you get isolated even more. It's like, why aren't you joining in? I can't tell that you can't hear me or understand me.
Well, even more than sight?
Yes,
Whoa.
absolutely. And in fact, I learned this as an undergraduate that deafness is the most isolating of the sensory deprivations. Because when you're blind, most people can tell you're blind. You're wearing glasses, or you have a guide dog, you have a cane, and so they can immediately identify you. But somebody that's deaf, it's much more difficult to get that, and so they tend to get it's easier for them to be marginalized and left out of verbal conversations that they can't participate in. So yeah, both of those things, and we're talking about loneliness, it does contribute to higher levels of loneliness.
It's so weird then that when you get anxious, or it starts to really build up inside you, that you want to then be more alone.
Yes. Well, just because it's good for you doesn't mean that you naturally gravitate toward it. Right?
You're so right, girl. I mean, let's talk about chicken and broccoli. No one gravitates naturally to chicken and broccoli. People gravitate towards ice cream.
Exactly.
So actually, that's actually very interesting.
So, I mean, it's part of that. Everything becomes overwhelming, and you want to, you don't want to have to deal with it, because a lot of it is social anxiety. So I'm not feeling good. Do I want to go out and interact? No, I want to be alone with my own anxiety and not get any more anxious, even though it's worse to stay alone. So it's a vicious circle that way, which is why you need lots of different kinds of tools to bring you out. The memory tool, the joy conditioning tool, breath, movement, laughter. We need a little vending machine of different options to really find those things that work for us immediately or on the short term, that we could practice, that we enjoy practicing, to get us out of that anxiety.
Yeah, well, your TED Talk, which is huge, by the way, is it ends on you doing exercise, but also like yelling out these affirmations.
Yes.
Can you explain to me a little about the combination between the body movement and the affirmations?
Yeah. So I did that because that is the workout that helped me lose 25 pounds when I needed to lose 25 pounds, and I went to the gym. And this workout, which is called Intensati, combines physical movements from kickbox and dance and yoga and martial arts with positive spoken affirmations. And I bring it into my talks because it's a little bit silly and nobody really wants to yell out these affirmations. But then you do it just once and it's like, yeah, I am powerful. And very quickly you feel that power. So it's a combination of the physical movement that works to give your brain a wonderful bubble bath of neurochemicals like noradrenaline, dopamine, serotonin. But the positive affirmations is that psychological boost, that declaration of these things that we have you say. We don't have you say, you know, I feel fat today. No, I am inspired. I feel like I believe I will succeed. I am on fire right now. And if you say it, if you declare it, I mean, when's the last time you walked down the street and said, I am on fire right now? And that's, people leave thinking that. And so it's this quick way to get people into both a positive mindset, but in a way that moves their body.
I love that. Can you actually take me down? I never heard of the 5 types of anxiety managements that you do. Do you mind taking me through those?
Sure. They're just time points in the experience of anxiety where you can emotionally regulate and get yourself out of the bad anxiety. And so the first one is what we already talked about, which is think about these situations that you've known all your life that, or for a long time, they will give you anxiety, and prepare for them. Maybe you can think about a different way to have the interview that gives you more power, makes you feel more comfortable to change the situation. Then comes the tools to emotionally regulate when you start to feel those butterflies. And we talked about too, deep breathing. That will activate your parasympathetic nervous system, that calms your nervous system naturally. And, well, you can't very well get up and start moving around, but if you know you're going to feel anxious, go up and down the stairs, take a quick power walk up and down the hallway before you start. It'll get yourself into that calmer state once you get in that situation. The next one is, if there is a topic or a person that is causing that anxiety, you can simply deflect attention from that. Try and avoid it. We do this all the time with our kids. If there's a scary dog over there that's going to cause a lot of fear, anxiety, what do? Say, oh, look at the playground over there. Look at the fire truck. Well, do that for yourself. And it's a great way. Just because that scary person or that scary question is there doesn't mean you have to go there. You can tactfully and thoughtfully avoid that to decrease your anxiety. And then after the fact, as you were saying, you know, sometimes after the fact you think, I wish I had done that, and that. Well, put that into action. And so this is where mindset comes in. And for example, if you have fear of speaking in public, fear of interviews, if you got through it using some of those emotional regulation kind of tools, you can tell yourself, you know, that wasn't so bad. I got through it. Look at all those tools that I use. And I didn't use that first one. Maybe I should have done the deep breathing a little bit longer. Maybe I'll try that next time. Come up with strategies to kind of improve that. Think about it as, instead of a task that you have to get through, as a challenge. So what can I do to make this experience, make my interview experience a better one for me? What do I have to do that? So if you address it like a positive challenge, that is, again, for the future, things that you can do, and start honing it. I think we have to get away from the idea, oh, this is terrible, I don't want to do it, let me just get through it, I'm not even going to think about it, I'm not going to try anything new, it's just going to be horrible, and I'm just going to go through it, and it's inevitable. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not inevitable. We can regulate our emotions. We can learn how to do it, and I am so optimistic about everybody's ability to do that, because the main theme of my whole science career has been brain plasticity, our ability to learn and change our brain response in response to the environment. Now, we can change it in the negative way and just end up being this, you know, puddle of anxiety, but we can learn and change. And those steps that I just went through are those steps of learning and changing and tweaking and trying to do better every time. That is brain plasticity. That is positive brain plasticity happening right now. And you can shift that negative anxiety. That is the brain power that you are going to be using to shift that negative anxiety response to a positive one.
I love that you said that, because I think that it's important for people to remember that they can do that. It isn't just a fundamental base that can never be changed.
Yes, exactly.
And I think a lot of people, it's a defeatist attitude.
Yes.
And I don't think people mean to. I think it just like when it really truly you believe it,
yes.
But then becomes so defeatist that you don't pick yourself back up.
Right, right. And it is modifiable. I mean, think of your brain as a big ball of silly putty. What do you want to make that brain into? How do you want to teach your brain to respond to these situations? And I'm going to tell you right now, you're never going to pull out, I'm never going to feel sad or never going to feel fear again. No, you want to feel that fear, but you want to use that activation that comes with fear to propel yourself, not to, go back down to a terrible anxiety. So that is the goal. That is the superpower that I was hoping to get to when I wrote this book.
I love that girl. You talk about cognitive reminders in your book.
Yeah.
And there's this study, I don't know if you've heard of it, where they take a bunch of women and before they go into a math test, they basically remind them, hey, you're a woman. And because typically men are supposed to quote unquote, be better at math than women, women actually end up doing worse when they're reminded that they're women.
Yeah.
Now, I've also heard that same test, they took these women and the women that were Asian, they went up to them like, you're Asian. And then they go into the math test and they crush it.
Yeah.
So like the power of cognitive reminders is just insane. And going to what you were saying about superpowers, it's super impressive that this can be a superpower or a kryptonite, depending on how you choose to use it.
Exactly. So that is really the power of mindset. So what do you believe about yourself? And if you believe that women are bad at math and they can't do engineering, then you will perform worse on math and engineering tests. But if your mom and your family have always told you, you have an amazing brain. You can excel at whatever you learn because your brain is able to learn whatever you want. You want to do well on tests? Study. Your brain will suck that in. I want to give, there's a gift that I could give everyone. It is the gift of the knowledge that the human brain is the most powerful structure known to humankind. And it was designed to learn. That means I don't care if you said I'm always bad at math. I've always been bad at math. I've always been bad at spelling. Oh my God. I'm talking this is not hypothetical. This is a real, I'm like revealing it to you. I'm a terrible speller. And I know what I need to do to be a better speller. In fact, I'm a much better speller in French when I took French classes because I knew it was really bad and I memorized all the spellings of all the words that I thought I would have to use on the essays. And so I spelled them correctly because I really paid attention to them. You can train your brain to learn anything. If you remember that, that is the best mindset that you can go into life with.
I love that because that reminder is, even if I fail, I can learn.
Yeah.
Even if I don't know now, I can learn. And so I'm always trying to, like you said, the book is such a great toolbox. I'm always trying to think about what tools I can use in certain situations.
Yes.
And when I'm not feeling confident, when I'm not feeling like I necessarily have the either intellect or skill to bring to the table, I love the cognitive reminder. And I'll say to myself, all right, Lisa, you may not know this yet. Right. And it lowers my anxiety. It lowers the angst of, oh my God, what are people going to say? Are they going to judge me? And it relieves that. And I remind myself of who I am. And I used to remind myself all the negativity. Oh, well, remember, Lisa, you're dumb. Like, what? You don't belong there. Remember when you failed at that, right? So the cognitive reminder was a total detriment to my self-esteem, how I showed up every day. And when I realized, I can just change the reminder that I'm telling myself. And then what do I want that to be? It's so freaking powerful.
It's so powerful. And you can shape your daily life with what you tell yourself in the morning. That is right there, the mind-body connection. It's not just in the mind. You can change your physiology. There are studies that show that if that patients getting anesthesia get more pain relief if somebody in a white coat comes to give them, it's like, oh, okay, I'm giving it, versus whether it's automatic.
Shut up.
Yes. So it's okay. You're taking care of me. Yes, I feel the relief. And it's that belief. It's like you're helping me. You're going to help me feel better. And I do feel better. It's a physiological response. So there are so many tools and so many functions that we can take advantage of our brain that are very practical, that you can do, that you can practice, that you can get better at. And that is how you can learn about yourself, make your life less stressful, and learn more about your emotions in general, which I think is very, very powerful.
I love that. I had no intention of doing this. I'm just going to surprise you on this.
Okay.
Are you down for doing like an outro with like the kick and the
Sure.
the exercise?
Sure.
I just want to like show people what you're freaking made of,
All
girl.
right, let's do
We're
it.
going to do on the wide camera. We ready?
Okay.
Let's do it,
Ready.
girl.
Okay.
And then, so in fact, while we're setting up, tell everybody at home where they can find your book.
Okay, you can get my book on all the outlets, Amazon.com,
Yes.
SimonSchuster.com. I recorded the audio of it, so you can get it on Audible.com. That was so much fun to be able to do that. Whew, it was hard to read 260 pages out loud, but we did it. And also go to wendysuzuki.com and join our Good Anxiety Citizen Science Project. So you can be part of these experiments where we are testing the effectiveness of different interventions, short meditations, short conversations, short stories that you can listen to look at the effects on your anxiety.
And that's on your website?
Yes. Go to
All right,
my
we'll
website.
put the links down below. And like I said, I just surprised this woman. As she was talking, I was like, I got to do it. So her TED Talk, this is exactly what she does. This is what she was talking about mind-body connection, how to overcome the anxiety. Let's do it. What are we doing?
Ready?
Yes.
We are.
All right.
Punches back and forth. Go right, left, right, left. And I say, I am really strong. You say it.
I am really strong.
Again, I am Wonder Woman strong. You say.
I am Wonder Woman strong.
We are really, really strong. You.
We are really, really strong. What up, guys? Thanks so much for watching this video. If you'd like another dose of badassery, make sure you watch this video right here because I know you like it. But hey, also, while you're here, guys, you might as well click that subscribe button down there so you don't miss any future episodes. And of course, until next time, be the hero of your own life. Peace out.